Good evening. This is Jason Dean coming live at you again for another Film Fanatic show. I have talked about it a lot before in the past. My favorite segments to get a chance to do for this channel are to have very cool guests. And so that is something I want to do more. It's a little bit harder at times because of scheduling, obviously, but it's something I want to. It's a path I want to kind of continue on with this channel, and so very excited to have the great Dr. Heather Beers here on this really cool show. We're going to be discussing Barbie, which is was a pretty big movie. Well, one of the biggest movies of the year of 2023. Might have, I think it actually was like the biggest movie of the year, and it was a really great film. We actually just watched it together. I saw it for the first time, and Heather, I believe it was your third time.
Mm-hmm.
So the movie had a lot to there's a lot to digest, but it was a very entertaining movie. So we wanted to talk about it. And we talked about it for quite a while after we watched it, which is kind of what you want from a movie experience. And so Dr. Heather Beers is a really great local music educator. She works at the Midcoast Music Academy. She has an incredible background in music and teaching, in the classical world music, you name it. She's played in all kinds of ensembles and orchestras. A real great, very new to the Mid-Coast Maine area, and so it's good for all of us in the music world to have this great influx in recent years of these great educators and musicians here in our little coastal town. So thank you again, Heather, for being on the show.
Sure.
And we've talked about music obviously a lot, and we have talked about films. And I remember seeing some videos that you had on your on a YouTube channel where you talked about certain things that were used music in the music form or music medium that was used for film scores. And I know so a lot of these things are all related. So if you wanted to introduce yourself or talk about any cool things that you've done or that are coming up for you.
Sure. I'm excited to be on the show. I've watched some of your content already and gotten a lot of enjoyment out of your passion for film. I'm not really sure which which video you're mentioning that on my channel, but I make some content on music education topics. I'm a string pedagogue, so I play double bass, electric bass, violin, cello, ukulele, and teach all the strings as well as music theory over at Midcoast Music Academy, and thrilled to be on the show.
Excellent.
One thing I wanted to add is as we're talking about this film, I have done some scholarship and research as well. This discussion we're going to have about Barbie is not really a proper feminist analysis. We're not using Judith Butler feminist theory here, so it's not a proper academic analysis. We're just going to talk about the movie, but just wanted to say that before we got started.
Absolutely. Well, it's interesting you say that too, because I recently watched. There's a few YouTube guys that I watch that do film criticism or they just review movies in general, and he was talking. This one guy I was talking, or that I have been watching for years, but he was talking about the backlash that a lot of YouTube guys sometimes get, and girls, about maybe they're not well, he was actually saying at one point, when it comes to film criticism, you had like Siskel and Ebert. They had their TV show. I grew up watching the Siskel and Ebert show, and that was when they talked about new movies that were coming out, and they had degrees in music education, and they worked for various newspapers. They had some serious credentials, and so this YouTube guy was saying that I watch every now and then was saying, well, it's a different day and age now, because now you can just have people who have opinions that can kind of voice their opinions. They're not necessarily having to have an academic background. And I think that is, I find that sometimes it's a dilemma, because on one hand, I think we live in a really great age where you can create all of this content and create and voice your opinion. But there's also times where I feel like you have that, that kind of thing of everybody and their grandmother is on board now. See, they all have a microphone, or they all have an opinion, and that's great in a lot of ways. But there's also like people who might not, have taken that time to understand the art, the craft of
Right.
the art form, or taken that deep dive. So it's always kind of an interesting balance,
Yeah.
of that.
Essentially, this is not a deep dive, and that's okay.
Yeah, we're just approaching the this talk about this film Barbie, really on, just from being fans of film. I was really reluctant. Not I wouldn't say reluctant, but sometimes for me, just personally, like when I hear about a film a lot, and it becomes a phenomenon, sometimes I kind of shy away from seeing the movie a little bit. I kind of want. Sometimes I like it when, if there's a movie that comes out of Hollywood that's really really big, maybe it sets box office records or whatnot. There's sometimes I like the storm to kind of calm down a little bit and then see it, for what it is at a movie. I don't want to keep hearing about it or this or that. Generally, I think if a movie is hyped and talked about, for the most part, it's probably going to be a pretty good or decent experience. Sometimes it does swing the other way, but it's generally, a big thing for if you're gonna be into the movie. So, but I generally like wait a while, and that's kind of how it was with Barbie, where I was like, I kept hearing it was very good.
Hmm.
I did see Oppenheimer last summer. We watched both of them back to back, which was pretty funny.
We did
And
Barbieheimer,
so we did the whole thing, and
the whole thing.
um, I was taken aback by how much I actually enjoyed Barbie. It was
Yeah, because me too. I mean, when I first heard about it, I didn't jump on the summer bandwagon either. I didn't see it right out
right,
of the
right,
gate. By the fall, I was really hoping to see it in the theater, but then I missed it because I typically don't see enough movies in the theater. My friends will tell you I go to one movie a year, and that's about it.
right, right.
But I wanted to, and then I missed the opportunity to. So then I ended up seeing it. I think it must have been around December, January, sometime in the winter, just here at home, and really liked it. I mean, I think I watched it and then I watched it again the next day because I just like I couldn't soak it all in the first time. But when I first heard about it originally, I mean, before the summer and before it became, sold as much as it did and was
Hmm.
so, made so much money. You first time you hear, oh, there's going to be a Barbie movie, you're like, oh, this could be really bad, right? Kind of the eye roll, and what the tween character even says is like, oh, like, Barbie just makes women feel bad about themselves.
Right,
Kind of
right.
like that's like the voice of that like skepticism right on the front end. Like before anybody had seen the movie, it was kind of like, oh, there's gonna be a Barbie movie. Like what's that gonna be about? And that was kind of my first like, ooh, eye roll, opinion there.
Exactly, exactly.
But then because it was like such a sensation, and because like everybody was talking about Greta Gerwig and just how well done the movie was, it was like, oh well, all right, that sounds kind of fun,
Hmm.
and then I was more into it. But like you, I'm not an early adopter of
Yeah,
big big
yeah. I
things
was,
that happen.
but the thing that I liked about Barbie a lot was, I think visually it was pretty stunning. Greta Gerwig is a pretty talented director.
It was visually, if I don't mind jumping in there,
Yeah,
but
no,
it
no,
was
please
fun in
do.
the way that the lettering, I mean, it looks like the Barbie font, like it used to be on the boxes,
Hmm.
and like, or I'm sure it still is, but it looks like the toy world, like,
Hmm.
and it they really did that visually really
Yeah, the
well.
detail was great, and I
Yeah.
thought it was. I'm a big fan of when a film has like, even in cases of where sometimes a film maybe might not be, say, terrific in a lot of other ways. Maybe the writing isn't so great, or maybe even the editing isn't so great, or maybe the acting isn't so great. But if the film has like this cool world building essence where it kind of draws you in, and it has this, you feel like you're physically in that location. I feel like Barbie has
For sure.
the great atmosphere,
Hmm.
and it's a great balance because it's got the satire, it's got the social commentary, and I had heard, in the past, some people saying that they felt this film was a little bit too heavy with the social commentary on things that we're currently dealing with as society. But I didn't think so. I didn't think it was. I thought it was there, but it wasn't. Like I want to see it again. like you were saying, you see it so for the first time and you wanted to see it kind of again because there was a lot going on, but I didn't think it was too dense. I didn't think it was overwhelming.
Yeah, I don't think it didn't beat a dead horse with anything like that. In fact,
Right.
when people were complaining about it, I thought it didn't even really, it didn't go super in depth on any kind of, big old, like, it wasn't heavy handed in its
Exactly.
message at all.
Yeah, I thought it struck a good balance because it definitely talked about a lot of things that, to a degree, like we mentioned it a little bit the other night, like the elephant in the room, like it goes there, it kind of pushes that.
It says the thing, what I mean.
It
I think
says the
that's
thing.
it says the thing, and yeah, there were a couple moments that do really it surprised me that it kind of kind of punched the wind out of me a little bit. Like when Will Forrest says, get back in the box. You know what I mean? Like that and even the first time, I don't know if it affected me quite as much as the third viewing, where it's like, oh, now I can really, now that I kind of know how the movie's laid out and what it's about,
Right.
where that could really land, because I knew there were all these little one-liners in there, but when you really put them all together, it actually, like, wow, if you think about like what it means to tell a woman to get back in the box, like, I mean, it's a small thing. It doesn't go into any complexity. It doesn't deal. It is really quote unquote white feminism, in the sense that it's only dealing with a really narrow lens of feminism. So of course it's incomplete, and of course it's still a movie about toys coming to life, essentially. So it's
Right.
we have to take it for what it is. But within that, I mean, with that speech in the middle, is it American Ferrera, is the actor's name.
Yeah.
Where
Right.
she, right when they're at Weird Barbie's house, and
Weird Barbie. Yeah.
Weird Barbie. Kate McKinnon is fantastic
Yeah.
in the movie. I mean, she's fantastic in everything, but she is just fantastic as Weird Barbie. But when this other character is kind of saying, it's just too hard. You can't be a woman perfectly. It really, I mean, it really punches every single time. It's just nice that somebody said the thing, as imperfect or incomplete, or without any of the complexity that a proper feminist analysis would need. It's sort of just nice to see something so popular, something that's so, in a sense, mainstream. Even that feels like sort of unusual for a movie to do that. It feels unusual and nice to hear, like, just nice to have that kind of in the public discourse, as like it's it's just too hard. The way that these gendered expectations are set up sometimes can get to you and can wear you down. So to hear it kind of just plainly said like that, I think was very was great. It was really nice.
I thought the other thing that was surprising, well, again, like, obviously had a lot of levity to it, because it talked about a lot of serious issues, but it never, I felt, did a disservice where it was too heavy-handed. Sometimes it happens for me where, I consider myself to be, hopefully, I think of myself as being a pretty progressive person, but I find that it can happen where I'll watch a certain film, and I know more or less what the story is going to be about, and it might have somewhat to a degree of an agenda. And even if I completely agree with, say, the political thing that they're kind of about, if I feel, or if I find when I see the film, if I'm kind of getting hit over the head with a club, and that they're like proselytizing to me, or I have to, like, or it becomes preaching to the choir kind of thing, I automatically am like, I kind of have this thing of where I'm kind of checked out at that point. I want the movie to hopefully be an experience, and even if I do agree, like, say it is that an extreme case of where I really, really do agree with that, with what the political thing might be for the directors or the film creators, like 100% agree with them. I think it's I still want to have, I want it to be entertaining, hopefully, even if it's a serious subject, but I want there to be an area where I can still make up my own mind and hopefully raise my own questions about things. I think one movie, like, it's a really cool movie, but, and again, this is like you said in the beginning of the show, these are just matters of our own opinion as being fans of film and cinema. but like one example for me, where it was that case of where I felt like I was getting hit over the head. One movie I thought where it kind of encroached on that was a movie that came out a couple of years back. Don't Look Up with Leonardo DiCaprio.
I still love the movie. Yeah, I hear what
Very
you're
cool
saying,
movie,
but I like that one a
but
lot.
very cool movie, and a lot of great actors in that movie. But I kind of felt, and even and it's an example like that the film clearly had an agenda, and I pretty much aligned myself with that agenda and my own personal things, but I felt like it really was it was just too preachy, and I felt like I was getting bombarded with this
And I don't think
message.
Barbie did that. I mean, like,
And I think Barbie
yeah.
did not do that. I think it handled that really well. It left the audience, you know, with being able to enjoy the experience, but to make up your own mind about certain things and not feel like you have to be told.
Which is why it's so remarkable when you
Right.
felt like it was less preachy than Don't Look Up, but there was even more of a backlash about Barbie, like in the general.
There was,
I mean,
yeah.
and it's like
There was,
for that,
definitely.
it's sort of like, but for that, like there's like one major speech and a couple little one-liners where there's like a thing, and you're like, really, for that amount of feminism you're gonna and for like the lightest version of feminism that you could
Right.
possibly have, it's not dealing with race effectively. We're not talking about women of color we're not even talking about any of the trans women or just trans people or any of the more complicated aspects that the feminist movement would ask us to consider. For that one little thing of saying that this one little thing, like it's hard to deal with these gendered expectations, and that's the thing they're going to come back at. It really puts into kind of sharp relief the discourse about the film.
That's an interesting comparison. I didn't think of that, the criticism, like both of those movies,
because it's so much higher for Barbie. I mean, like ridiculously so much higher. And then and I know again there was a lot of valid critique that, well, who cares if Greta Gerwig and Margot Robbie didn't win for it. And it's like, yeah, that's super true. I mean, there are other major, again, feminism is dealing with a lot more serious issues out there in the world. It still just sucked, like, that they didn't win. Like for such a beautiful film, and, like it's just like, oh man, really? Like it
doesn't it just doesn't make sense. Ryan Gosling, I thought was I've been a big fan of his for a long time. He was great in it, but it is a funny balance.
It just really kind of made the point all over again of why we needed the movie. Like,
But the other thing too that I love about this movie is that it has a lot of I think this script is really smart and a great cast. I was really excited. I had no idea that Will Ferrell was in it until I was watching it. And
the whole thing was well acted. I don't think there was a single,
the cast was great.
The cast was incredible. The whole and I mean, yeah, Ryan Gosling was great too. His acting and those little facial expressions and just the little gestures. I mean, he really acted it very well. Margot Robbie is incredible.
And it had a great, it was tackling some serious, heavy subjects at times, obviously. But it had a lot of great comedy. It had some heart.
Yeah.
It had some heart.
It's funny, yeah.
And it really got out to. It got pretty crazy and bonkers at times, and where I thought was really
it's just wacky enough to be like about toys, and then it's an enjoyable watch. It's funny. It's
and I'm curious, like, what you think about, because it's something that I've thought a lot about, like, because when Oppenheimer came out and Barbie, and it became that whole thing, and they opened the same weekend, and both movies are, they have a lot of social issues. They're dense, especially Oppenheimer, but very dense. But they have a lot of things to say. There's a lot to digest, and they're not really like, say, and I think we've talked about it, but like, you have like from May through August. That's usually the typical time period for like the summer blockbuster. Where all the Marvel movies will come out, all the big action movies, and that's where the studios launch all those movies, the Mission Impossible movies and what have you. And I love those movies too, but but typically, the fall or like the winter time is when it seems like studios get behind or release
Mm-hmm.
films that are like maybe films that are dramas or that are quieter movies, or independent films or what have you that might have a little bit of depth when pertaining to social issues. So, but I thought it was pretty fascinating. They had two of these movies that have a lot of that. I mean, they're really all about
Mm.
having some depth, and to see that both of those movies, you know, kind of set the box office world on fire,
Mm-hmm.
and where it would typically be a movie like say Iron Man 3 that would have done that.
Mm.
So I don't know like what your thoughts are about that or the box office, or do you think
But just
people
how much
are
money it made,
how
or
much money it made or how the timing of it,
mm.
or does that say anything different now about maybe where people's habits are or what they want as consumers or
Don't know. That's a good question, but I don't know that I mean, I just think it was remarkable that it made so much money, and I think that, like, yay for Greta
yeah, it's
Gerwig, and
staggering.
like
Like
it was
I
right,
remember
like
when they both came out, they had big
everybody
openings,
expected
but
the
then it
opposite.
just
Everybody
kept
expected
going. Right.
Oppenheimer to be like the thing, which is why I did want to see it, eventually. It was kind of what I expected, as far as being kind of dark and heavy, and I didn't expect it to be quite as dense as it was, but um I was kind of like, okay, once I see this, I don't ever need to see it again. Like once I see Oppenheimer, I'm going to see it once, don't need to see it again. And I
Hmm.
felt exactly that once we did see it. But no, but I mean, Barbie made a staggering amount of money, and I think it was sort of like, in a way, underhyped when they were first talking about it, and it was like clearly everybody went
I
in that
think it was
weekend
underhyped. Yeah.
thinking that like
Right.
Oppenheimer was going to sweep the weekend, be the whole first
Right.
couple weeks out.
Right.
It was the exact opposite, and that's super cool. I think that's we need more female voices in film. We need more female directors. It does feel, you do. I think it is possible to sort of feel that it is a female director, and it was handled really well. I think a lot of the issues were handled well. There's that little bit of eye roll, like, oh, it's going to be Barbie, and they
Hmm.
even do that in the film. They have that tween character kind of voice that, Barbie makes women feel bad, and but you also, like you said, it has the heart where the mom character is kind of feeling more nostalgic about that time, when she was a child, and reliving that with her daughter. I mean, that there's nothing wrong with that.
Right.
It's so easy to trivialize that sort of thing into making it feel like, well, you don't get to have that, or that's not important, or like, but why? Like, why not?
Hmm.
Why not have a minute for that too? I mean, separate from any feminist critique or anything like that sort of speaks to a larger experience. As with Barbie as this representation, there's still a beloved nature for some women in their childhoods, or remembering back, or there's just because it's costumes and toys doesn't mean it's completely unnecessary, or like doesn't
Absolutely.
have to be
Absolutely.
completely as complicated as the toy is, or as the Barbies have been. There's some element of heart in there that is not easily dismissed, and I think the movie did a really good job of giving me a better appreciation for the positive side of what that experience is. And even the beginning,
The balance, yeah, the balance of all those
in the
things.
beginning, it didn't occur to me that before Barbie, all the dolls were babies.
Hmm.
Like I was like, oh yeah, that makes sense, right? Like it
Yep.
makes sense when you like think about it, but it wouldn't have occurred to me as a statement that, like, you wouldn't have a toy, and I think about we used to get those catalogs, because I'm old enough to have seen, toy catalogs, for Christmas. And there were like the Bob Mackie Barbies that
Okay.
had
Yep.
the real elaborate gowns. I
Right.
always wanted one. I never got one, but they were like real elaborate, and like they were collector's items. I mean, they're probably now like ridiculous, like collector's items, but I was like, they're really beautiful, like, and I don't know. It's more than just like the plastic toy, and the impossible measurements, and the instep
Exactly.
the instep
Exactly.
that you on the tiptoes all the time. I mean, it is that too, and there are certainly like negative aspects of that, you know on the other side about like what you're supposed to look like as a woman or as a and seeing that young as a girl. And of course there are problems with that too. But I think the movie deals with that really well, where she's saying, I just want to be perfect again, and that little journey that, what is it, standard Barbie, traditional Barbie?
Yes,
Yeah.
traditional.
Traditional Barbie. I forget what her name. Yeah, what she said it was. Yeah, traditional Barbie. But 100% my favorite part of the movie was when they broke the fourth wall for that 1 second. When it goes, she's like, I'm not pretty anymore. And the director's voice cuts in and it's like, pause. Like, it's like, time out. Margot Robbie is the wrong actress to cast if you want to make this point. And I thought that was just, it's great. It's brilliant. It was like, because she looks pretty no matter what she does,
It was
that was
moment
great.
of
It was
greatness.
just so funny. Yeah. So funny. There were so many funny parts too. I mean, all of the Ken parts were hilarious.
And Greta Gerwig, like I've seen a few of her films. What was that one movie that you mentioned before that she had done?
Lady Bird,
which
really
got
great.
A bunch of acclaim, and she's done quite a few films over the years. And I remember hearing about her. The first time I heard about her was probably 12 or 13 years ago. There was a movie that came out. And it was actually as far as I know, Greta Gerwig started as an actress in kind of independent and in the independent world, in the horror world, and so she worked. She was in this film called The House of the Devil, and it's very similar to. I think it's its own thing, but it's kind of similar to Rosemary's Baby. And it's directed by Ty West, who Ty West has become a huge director in his own right. He directed The X, and he works with Mia Goth. They both did Pearl, and Maxine is coming out. He's become a real big director in his own right. But Greta Gerwig was in House of the Devil, and she played one of the girls, one of the characters. Pretty much one of the main characters in that film. And I remember seeing that movie a long time ago, and I think I bought it on DVD a few years after that, and I've seen it, and I liked that movie quite a bit. And her character always stood out as something a little bit, just something unique about it. And then fast forward, she's become this like household name, like massive director, and it's I don't know, it's pretty cool seeing the trajectory of certain directors or actors that you've been following, say, for a long time, and so it's very cool. But I'm definitely looking forward to. I think
more movies
Barbie.
from her.
Barbie is definitely a movie to see again, because again it's got a lot of information. But again,
what else it has is again, kind of coming back to this point about nostalgia, because like. We had the Lego movie, like Lego Batman, right? Which had, again, it's a toy, plastic. We had a lot of nostalgia with that. There's been, all kinds of different, I don't want to say like boy-oriented, like the Marvel, the Ninja Turtles. Like there's been all kinds of that. And like, I don't know that I have a lot of other examples about, essentially female-coded toys that have been given that kind of...
I mean, because I grew up during the time of like the He-Man and Masters Universe, the Star Wars action figures,
Star Wars,
I grew up on all that G.I. Joe and all of that
this
stuff.
This is like the one little chance for nostalgia we've had, and that isn't strongly, superhero coded, and it's it's nice to have this little nostalgia. I mean, I think nostalgia for its own sake, even, and then she did so much more. I think Greta Gerwig did so much more with that than just make it like nostalgia or selling toys, capitalist kind of direction. Like it I'm sure it accomplishes that for the stakeholders, but it became more than that. And I think in particular Billie Eilish's song.
Yep, I remember before. I think it was before we actually watched the movie. You sent me that video.
That song is so good.
It's really great. And
brilliant. She truly deserved every award that she got for that.
I remember I might have been the first thing I said to you while we were watching Barbie. We were a little bit ways into it, and I think I turned to you and I said, I get the sense that these guys and girls that were in this film, the actors, and really just everybody involved with the film, but particularly the actors, they probably had a lot of fun making
They
this
looked
movie.
like they had fun
And I
making
think
it. Yeah.
that that's one thing that says a lot about films, where obviously, again, it tackles a lot of serious things,
It's
but
fun and
it's fun,
enjoyable. It's fun to
and it's
watch.
not like it's not so serious that
Mm-hmm.
you know, well, like I had described Oppenheimer, like I've seen that movie twice, and I watched it. I saw it in the theater, and then I saw it again. And I did a review recently, a second
Mm.
reviewing of that film, and
It's hard to
we had
watch.
a lot of things to say about that. And it
Mm-hmm.
was, watching them both back to back was really fun,
Mm-hmm.
but it was a good 6 hours, almost
It
of
was 5. Barbie's 2 and Oppenheimer's 3. Like
3 hours.
almost on the dot. So,
So it's
but
a good,
it felt
it's
like
a
6
full,
hours.
it's a full day. It's a full
Yeah.
day of
Full
movies.
day of movies.
With, for me,
Mm-hmm.
that's not a problem. But the thing with Oppenheimer was, I without going as far as like, I'm not trashing that movie. I
Mm-hmm.
still think on the technical level, it's a really incredibly
Mm-hmm.
well done film. But I did think that
It's hard to watch.
it's like a tall drink of water. It's a lot to get through. I got pretty fatigued for a while, more so the second time.
Mm.
But again, it was like, I don't know, like I like it when a filmmaker, or there's something, there's some element, not that it has to be, not that a film has to be like this, turned into like some kind of screwball comedy for me to enjoy it, because that's
Mm.
not the case. But I love it when you can see the filmmakers, or like or it might be said in the actual screenplay, or hinted at, of where you're making a film, and it's a serious thing when a filmmaker embarks on that kind of journey. I mean, but you gotta like not take yourself so
Mm-hmm.
darn seriously all the time, and yeah, I think you have to be able to have, you have to be able to laugh a little bit at yourself, or
It
just
even has
not.
beach.
Yeah.
It has beach.
So, I think just having that kind of element, it goes a long way. I think to understand the story, especially if it's dealing with heavy,
Mm-hmm.
you know, incredibly thought provoking things. It's nice to have that balance, where it kind of lightens things up a little bit. So, but again,
Good
very
watch.
very very cool movie,
A lot of
and I
fun.
will definitely watch. Probably won't watch Oppenheimer again, but I probably will watch Barbie again. I do want to see it in the future. Do you regret not getting a chance to see it in the theater, or does it really matter to you so much?
I don't know that it ruins my experience or anything. I think I, yeah, it doesn't matter to me either way. Like that's more of a, it's hard to get me out to the theater, but might be going more often. So.
Um,
No, it's okay.
um, is I mean, so I mean, obviously we touched on Ryan Gosling
Mm.
being kind of winning the only award for that film,
Other
and
than
I
Billie Eilish, yeah.
right, and it was, Barbie was nominated, I think, across the boards, at least
Yeah,
for
for Greta
everything.
and Margot Robbie.
And I think it
Yeah.
might have won probably a few Golden Globes
Yeah.
before. That used to be. It's funny. That used to be something I used to watch the Academy Awards like religiously.
Mm.
I'm a nerd now, but I used to be even more of a nerd back then, which is
What?
probably hard to believe. I actually had a back quite a few years ago when I first started getting into movies like big time. I had a subscription to Entertainment Weekly. Yes, I can admit that in public, and probably can't leave my house now that I said that in
Mm.
public. But I had a subscription to Entertainment Weekly. I used to have a subscription to Rolling Stone.
Mm.
I've always been fascinated by pop culture. My taste even back then were on kind of the decade or earlier decades, like the 60s, 70s, and
It's
what
like
have
the
you.
Confessions of Jason Dean. Like.
But I always enjoyed having my finger on that pulse of things. But I find myself not really, and that also entailed me staying up on like every new movie that I heard about that was going to be nominated, say for an Academy Award or the Golden Globe, or that had Oscar buzz, I would go see it. I would I didn't care what kind of movie it was, I would see it. And then by the time the Academy Awards came, I knew every movie that was I had seen everything basically that was talked about. Now it's like, it never happens. And it's usually way after the fact, like Barbie, for instance.
Adulting, it's hard.
It's, and I just, I've just lost interest into what these award shows are. And I don't know, it's interesting. It kind of goes back and forth because every now and then something gets through that really, gets recognized and gets, some kind of notoriety. And it's kind of like I feel like it's the glitch in the matrix. But generally I don't. And Barbie's that case of where it was something I did want to see, but I don't know, I had this funny reaction to it. I don't know if you have any thoughts about those kinds of things or those kinds of perceptions.
Like about what?
As far as like the acclaim that certain films get, the Academy Awards as like a recognized
Oh, you mean the
viable
fact that it
institution.
didn't win as much, and what does that say?
Right,
Like,
and
oh, okay.
is it given way too much credit, or is it just a bunch
Oh
of
yeah, I mean, I think they've gotten it wrong about a lot of movies.
right,
Like, so are they really in touch with it? It's like no, no, probably not. And I mean, that's been another critique that not just from a feminist angle, but from the race angle. I mean, the Academy Awards
sure,
and Oscars have been a nightmare when it comes to recognizing not just female directors, but directors and actors of color as well. So I think it is a to say it's out of touch is the nice way of saying there's something to do there, and because it is at best out of touch, I do think it kind of diminishes I mean, it does in the sense that for the maybe more modern generation, they're not looking to that as being the taste making that it was.
right,
It's just that those things still matter when it comes to funding of projects. It matters and it doesn't. Maybe it doesn't matter as much as taste, but it does still matter to say that it won the Oscar, it won the Academy Award. I'm sure that still matters to someone.
sure, sure,
Yeah, and again, not to knock Ryan Gosling, he gave a great performance, but it was just really ironic that, of the things it was up for, that it, especially with how much money it made, how successful it was, how much buzz there was around the movie, and even how much backlash. It seems like for a director to get anybody talking that much about their film, you'd think that Greta Gerwig deserved a recognition for that, but. Yeah.
Yeah, and to a degree, for a movie to be, as far as like movies that have like set records,
Right.
in the box office, it's kind of like, in the same company of like Avatar or, films like that, or
Yeah.
Terminator 2. And it's not really a movie that it's so different really from any of those movies.
So different and that's what's
and
in a way so cool about it, right?
That's crazy.
I mean, that's what's so cool about it,
That's
that it's so
like
different.
when I brought up the idea of like, or, the time frame when that came out, typically the big blockbuster time period or time frame. Like typically a movie that, like one movie that I did see that I really liked a lot, which was nominated for a bunch of awards, but I think it only maybe won one or two, was Killers of the Flower Moon. And I believe that came out in like January, February.
Right.
It came out in the wintertime. So
I still have to see that.
that's
I haven't
typically
seen
when
it.
something, I mean, granted, that's a very dark movie, but it's got a lot of, weight to it, and it raises a lot of questions. So it's interesting that a movie like that, Barbie, kind of got. And I remember knowing slews of people, moms and families that were going to it. And I definitely think it's one of those films that you can go to it and, be my age or what have you, and get something from it. And if you have kids, like the kids will get, like, I
Right.
think it does have enough
Appeal.
that there's something for everyone. And it definitely is like that kind of family outing, but it's got, like, I don't think as a kid, I can't think of a movie that I saw. Well, I take that back, but I can't really think of too many movies where I saw as a kid, right? I went with my family and it maybe had that kind of thing, like maybe E.T. or like Return of the Jedi.
Mm,
I did remember seeing Silence of the Lambs with my family, and that
great movie.
movie like just traumatized me and scared me.
Scary
Um,
movie.
but typically it's like I don't know. It's not. I don't know. It's just cool, and it's a movie that like it has a little bit of depth, and you can like eat popcorn and eat ice cream afterwards, and like take your kids and like
Mm,
and then they might want to see it again, and then the parents want to see it again, and it's I don't know. It's an interesting. It's
mm-hmm.
kind of a phenomenon, I think.
Yeah.
So but it's always unpredictable. And the other thing too, um, that's very interesting about both of these movies, especially Barbie, was I've read numerous times online different articles where those movies were regarded as movies that single-handedly, with the exception of one of the last Top Gun movies, I think it was
Mm.
Top Gun Maverick, um, with that movie also included, but Barbie very much being talked about and Oppenheimer being movies that single-handedly saved movie theaters
Oh, interesting.
because of the records it set.
Oh,
Because
wow.
there's been tons of movie theaters that have closed
Mm.
and competing with all those crazy kids that like to stream movies at home. So it's it's been a dilemma, but those movies are regarded as really kicking off that box office. And the other one
Mm.
other last thing too, as far as we had talked about it, where I collect physical media. I'm a big collector of films, and there was this big thing of where um, physical media is going to basically go away someday. And one of the big things that had happened was there was a big company that recently, Best Buy, they closed. They didn't close, but they sold off all of their physical media. Like you can't
Mm.
buy any movies there, Blu-rays, 4Ks at all anymore.
Mm-hmm.
And when I first started collecting movies, you would buy them there, and then I discovered other places like Bull Moose.
Right.
But the thing that was the most shocking was when they announced that they were not even selling any of their things online anymore. Like so they were gutting it completely, their physical media, and that was like whoa. And I saw that systematically sent shockwaves, and because I follow this stuff a lot, and it's kind of where I put my money. I saw it affect these chains right away. Where titles within 3 or 4 weeks of that happening, I saw at shops that I was going to, suddenly those titles were not available. And the reason is a lot of these boutique companies, like a lot of the movies that I buy, where the boutique labels, where they a lot of deal with a lot of imported movies, what have you, they sell them to companies like Best Buy, but they sell them through their distributor online, so they make a significant sale. But suddenly the market was cut completely,
Mm.
so it really had ripple effects. So it was interesting to see that these two movies come along that not only ignite the box office, but when Oppenheimer came out on Blu-ray on 4K, it became the biggest selling Blu-ray of all time
Mm.
and the biggest selling 4K of all time. And the same thing came along with it, where people were saying, physical media, it's not going anywhere. Thank you, Oppenheimer.
Don't worry, classical music has been dying
And
for
so it's
50 years, so like,
it's an interesting
yeah.
thing. But anyway, Heather, I
Yeah.
really this has been an awesome show, and I really appreciate you coming
Mm-hmm.
on the show. You have lots of great things to bring to the table. Closing up on about 50 minutes. So, is there anything else you wanted to talk about, or any new things that are coming up for you, or last thoughts, or
No, I think we nailed it, covered it.
all right.
Mm-hmm.
So thanks again. Thanks again to Dr. Heather Beers. It's been a blast. And who knows? Maybe we'll do more shows like this, and model ourselves off of Siskel and Ebert. So we'll see. Thanks again, and we will see you next time. Peace.